know, it's crazy, and I don't know why this is, but I think like Kansas, for whatever reason, is just flying under the radar. I think, I don't know how Kansas can fly under the radar, but I think they're flying under the radar right now, and they're a little bit more underappreciated than most people think. I mean, they right now on offense are as good as anybody in the country on offense with Abaji and Braun, and they have a lot of different guys. I think even if big fella McCormick can even get going a little bit more, they'll be even better. But maybe their defense isn't as good as maybe a typical Kansas team is in terms of maybe the rim protection. Their 2-point defense is usually like, top 5. It's not as good right now, maybe because they're smaller, but Kansas, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe it's because they lost to Dayton and Orlando and people forgot about them, but I wouldn't be sleeping on the Jayhawks right now.
Yeah, it feels like Remy Martin there right now. He's a little bit more comfortable at Kansas because he gets to play games where the lights are on and where they're able to have power and where they're able to have air conditioning. So it seems like he's enjoying it. I think he's a lot more comfortable there.
Hey, you got David Braun and you have Ochai Agbaji. Right now, Braun has emerged. I mean, Bill Self has got him as a junior right now. Offensively, he's a joke in terms of those two guys as a 1-2 punch. David McCormick's a senior inside. He's probably got to do a little better job for him. He isn't playing as well as he needs to for them to be able to win the Big 12, which I think a lot of people will say he'll get there. He's played like this throughout his career. Jalen Wilson really hasn't gotten going, maybe because of the slow start. But to me, with Remy Martin being new, Jalen Wilson sort of having a slow start, McCormick's kind of slow, they can still get a lot better. And Kansas, Baylor in the Big 12, both those two teams are playing for 1 seeds coming out of that league.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. We talked about a month back, and I think this week before Christmas on Arch and our podcast, the Next Play podcast, Rob, we're going to break down Kansas on offense and Abaji, how he scores. But if you remember, we talked about, who do you think's the best at, the best coach, offensive coach, best defense, best. And I brought up Bill Self. And the reason that I bring him up as I think he's the best offensive coach in college basketball. He's done it over a long, long period of time, but he also sometimes does it not with, 8 first-team McDonald's All-American, 8 McDonald's All-Americans on his roster. So in other words, he's overwhelming you with the talent. Like he gets some really good players and he gets his fair share. But as evidence, when you look at this year's Kansas team, I think we talked about it. I don't know if they have a single high school McDonald's All-American on their roster, yet they have players that have developed in his system. And all of a sudden, as Christmas approaches and you look at who's one of the top 5 offensive efficiency, the most efficient offensive teams around Christmas right now in college basketball, Kansas, there they are. They're 3rd. Again, 3rd. Where were they a year ago? It's like every year as the faces change, not always having the best point guard, not always having the elite. And then when he does, that's when he's unstoppable. But they have a top 5 offense right now, efficiency. And I do think they are flying under the radar a little bit, but it amazes me how year in, year out, his teams score. They play with an amazing amount of efficiency and freedom, and they have a style that I think is second to none. But that other team, talk about flying under the radar, because of the early games Duke played, they were on the big stage, and then they played at home in more of a quiet manner. Duke's really good as well. When you talk about teams vying for 1 seeds, don't forget about them. Don't forget about them. They'll be right there.
I think the team that's probably the most underrated team in the country is USC. I mean, they're even underrated out here in the West with UCLA and Arizona. UCLA obviously coming in. Arizona's been that fast start. Everyone's been amazed. USC very, very has went around their business and are just sitting at 12-0. And I don't think enough people are talking about them right now as legitimate Pac-12 contender, coming off an Elite 8 with a lot of players. Mobley is a much, he's really amped up his level of play. They got Boogie Ellis now added to the mix. I think two of the most quietly have went about their business. I said Kansas, but I think USC being at 12-0, I think people need to start to look at those guys a little bit more in terms of what they're doing.
You know,
And I-
USC's on a pause
Yeah.
and UCLA. And if you look at that, the Arizona schools play in LA right after Christmas. So Arizona will play both UCLA and USC on their home courts, huge games. And then you have Arizona State, which will follow. Thank God that they're not playing a home game. They get to leave. And I think running water and lights will be in effect for them on that trip. But USC, UCLA, Arizona, Gonzaga. Why did I bring those four up? Getting the 1 seed in the West, Rob, is huge. It is so big. It allows you to stay in the Western time, the Pacific time zone. It allows your fans to literally drive a couple of hours from where they live to watch you play live. I mean, it versus going to the Midwest and having to play through, for example, Kansas and their fans, which would have that same advantage in a different time zone. And when you look at these games right after Christmas, Arizona playing SC and UCLA, and then now Gonzaga as they enter their conference play, you know, those four teams are all vying for the top seed in the West. And that is a coveted seed if you're out here. But I brought up UCLA and USC with the COVID pause. I mean, right now, I don't know if either program is able to even practice. And how long that will go, you know, thank goodness right now we still have some time, but hopefully they can both get back on their feet and be as good as they're able to be for those really important games, which are going to happen right at the crack of New Year.
All right. So each of you guys gave us your most underappreciated or underrated team in college basketball. I'm going to give you mine and I want your thoughts on it. It's Auburn. They are currently sitting at 10-1. Their only loss is a double overtime thriller to UConn in the Bahamas. They have one of the best, if not the best, freshman in college basketball in Jabari Smith. They have a defensive anchor in Walker Kessler that erases everything at the rim. And they haven't even gotten Alan Flanagan back at 100%. And he was the guy that I thought was going to be their best player this season. So that's my pick. You give Bruce Pearl a whole bunch of athletes and a bunch of little guards that can create. And I love KD Johnson. That dude, I feel like he was made to play for Bruce Pearl. Someone with that much intensity and athleticism. Like he was made to play for Bruce Pearl. I don't think people are talking enough about them.
We talked about this, and I always look at this when we're getting ready to play a team. Auburn is 16 on offense in terms of Ken Palm efficiency, 15 on defense. It's back to that balance. And the reason it's so important is on a given night, a night like tonight, for example, Xavier at Villanova, can you win with your elite defense because you have that too, right? Or can you use your offense so good that you don't rely just on a three-point shot? You can get fouled, you can score close to the basket, you have different ways. And when you have these teams right now that are good on both offense and defense, especially that good, it's much more difficult to beat them. And Auburn right now, especially when you consider, like we talked about with Arizona, not having any injuries yet, right? And hopefully they're able to go wire to wire. But, you know, usually something's going to happen. And now your depth is challenged. Can you still overcome it? Your point about Auburn with Flanagan having not even played yet and considering what they've accomplished, they have a huge upside. They really do.
That would be my only thing for Auburn is, you know, for whatever reason, I just think, you know, when you watch them play, they're still a little bit, they can get out of whack during a game. You know what I mean? Like if you watch them play at St. Louis, tough game, you know, they got down in that game at different times and they came back but they take at some points tough shots, you know, really tough shots.
Arch, devil's advocate, they're 12th in America in turnover percentage.
Their style
is what I said.
Yeah.
They're playing frenetic, they're playing fast. There's only 11 teams in the country that take care of the ball better than them. I mean, that's really impressive when you
know,
think.
the one thing that's really impressive about those guys, and you said this, Wendell Green at the point guard for them, he was at Eastern Kentucky last year.
Mhm.
And he's done a heck of a job for Auburn. I mean, he is playing a ton of minutes, and he's doing a great job for their team. He's a high assist guy. He's small, a little water bug with the ball. I watched him in high school quite a bit, but Wendell Green's been a really nice addition for the team, as is KD Johnson, first-year player transfer from Georgia. So those guys being new, I think the word that you use with Auburn that's scary is upside. There's still got so much room to grow. I mean, Jabari Smith's only played, 11 games, 12 games in college so far? I mean,
Jabari Smith is shooting 46% from three,
he's the number one pick.
45% from two, and he shoots 84% from the line.
That's the number one pick in the draft. I think I said it when he was in the Bahamas. When you watch that guy play, man, there isn't a whole lot of people that look like him when he's on the court.
Are you there, Sean? Would you take him number one?
No, I shouldn't say no. I think it's still too early to tell, but it's so neck and neck. I think there's the same three guys as you keep watching them evolve and get comfortable. And we talked about this. It is so fundamentally unfair to ask that question when all three of those guys are freshmen and the month is November, right? I mean, it's like, wait a second, they haven't even had an opportunity to put a winter coat on. And, we're asking that question. I think with each passing game and each week, you learn a little bit more, but, I think, the big three remains the same. And I don't think you can anoint any one of those three guys, Paolo, Chet, or Jabari as the number one pick. It's hard to overlook Paolo for me. When you look at how versatile he is physically, his body, playing 82 games. One thing that I learned in some of the players that I had at Arizona, DeAndre Ayton, Stanley Johnson, Zeke Naji, the physical component. I give you those names because those guys, they left Arizona physically ready to compete. But it's amazing, even when I watched guys like that, how difficult it was for them to play 82 games, 48-minute games, 82 games from start to finish. Like, I never saw anybody in person like DeAndre, but if you judged him in his rookie year with the Suns, physically, it was a real adjustment for him. And I think when you look at those three guys, Paulo, his body is the most ready-made to walk in the door and be able to deal with that 82 game grind and build off of it. And that's one reason why I really like him.